Marcus Hayes's hands were shaking as he buckled his 7-year-old son into seat 12F, not from fear of flying, but from the weight of the steel band on his wrist that no one could see. The woman in 12E wrinkled her nose at his oil-stained jacket like he was something dirty she'd stepped in. She had no idea those same hands had once pulled off an impossible landing that saved 6 lives at 30,000 feet. No idea that the failure sitting beside her wore a call sign that would make every F-22 pilot in America snap to attention. But in 30 minutes, when their plane made an emergency landing at a military base, she was about to find out exactly who she'd been ignoring. Comment what city you're watching from. Let's see how far this story flies. The leather seat cost more than 3 months of Marcus's rent. He knew because he'd done the math while the gate agent handed him the upgrade paperwork with that look, the one that said, "You sure you belong here, veterans courtesy upgrade, free." But nothing about this felt like a gift. "Dad, this is so cool!" Ethan pressed his face against the window, clutching his scratched F-22 model like a lifeline. The toy had been a thrift store find 2 years ago. Same week, Marcus sold his flight jacket to cover Ethan's asthma medication. That jacket had his call sign embroidered on the chest, Hawk 1. "Buckle up, buddy." Marcus's voice came out rougher than he intended. He cleared his throat, adjusted the steel band on his wrist, the inscription hidden under his sleeve where it belonged, where it had lived for 3 years ever since the Air Force decided broken men couldn't be trusted with $1,000,000 machines. The woman settling into 12E arrived like a storm system. Designer carry-on, Prada bag. That particular shade of blonde that cost more than Marcus made in a month at Lopez Auto Shop. She glanced at Marcus once, processed the Walmart jeans, the worn work boots, the ghost of motor oil under his fingernails, and dismissed him entirely. Diana Sinclair. He'd heard the gate agent use her name. Senior VP at Vertex Defense Systems. The kind of woman who bought the planes Marcus used to fly, treated them like investment portfolios, instead of the machines that carried sons and daughters and fathers home. She sighed. Not quite loud enough to be confrontational, just loud enough to make her point. Marcus had learned to read these moments. The micro-calculations people made, the seat assignments they resented, the space they wished they didn't have to share. "Excuse me." Diana flagged down the flight attendant before the woman had even finished stowing someone else's bag. "Is there any way to—" She gestured vaguely toward first class. The flight attendant's smile was professional sympathy. "I'm so sorry, Ms. Sinclair. We're completely full today." Diana's jaw tightened. She returned to her seat like she was being forced into economy on a budget airline. Pulled out her phone. Erected a wall of importance between herself and the situation beside her. Marcus focused on Ethan. His son was making the F-22 do barrel rolls above his tray table. Soft sound effects, barely audible. The toy had been Sarah's last gift before that training flight. Before the malfunction. Before Marcus had been grounded with a knee injury and couldn't fly chase for her. Before he'd listened to her voice on the radio, calm and professional, even as her jet was dying, and been completely powerless to do anything but listen. "Sir." The flight attendant appeared with that careful smile they reserved for passengers they weren't quite sure about. "Can I get you something to drink before takeoff?" "Water's fine, thanks." Marcus kept his voice neutral. Polite, small. "And for the little one?" "Apple juice, please." Ethan looked up, remembered his manners. "Thank you." The flight attendant's smile warmed. Kids always got the benefit of doubt. It was the men in oil-stained jackets who had to earn it. Diana was on her phone now, voice pitched just loud enough to claim territory. "No, I told you to push the meeting to Thursday. I don't care if General Morrison has scheduling conflicts. Our contract, our timeline, they can adjust." She talked about generals like most people talked about mechanics. Service providers, vendors, people who existed to accommodate her schedule. Marcus felt Ethan shift beside him, making his jet quieter. His son had developed this sixth sense for when Dad was tense, when the air felt wrong, when it was better to be smaller. "Those toys are so noisy on long flights." Diana wasn't talking to anyone specifically. just announcing her observation to the universe. I once sat next to a child who made airplane sounds for 5 straight hours. It was unbearable. The businessman across the aisle chuckled. Solidarity in shared suffering. Ethan's hands stilled. The F-22 stopped mid-flight. He looked up at Marcus with those gray eyes. Sarah's eyes asking a question he was too young to put into words. Did I do something wrong? Marcus's jaw clenched hard enough to hurt. His hand found Ethan's shoulder, squeezed gently. You're fine. You're perfect. This isn't about you. But it was about them, wasn't it? About being the wrong kind of people in the right kind of seats. About not fitting. About taking up space in a world that had already decided they didn't deserve it. The flight attendant returned with drinks. Diana's water came in actual glass. Marcus's in plastic. Ethan's juice in a small cup with a lid. Small distinctions that communicated everything. Thank you. Marcus took his water, made eye contact, smiled like he wasn't calculating the exact difference between glass and plastic, between respect and dismissal. The engines began their pre-flight whine. Marcus knew this sound in his bones. Boeing 737-800 late 2000s model. He'd consulted on emergency procedures for this exact aircraft 4 years ago. 8-week contract that paid for Ethan's preschool and 2 months of rent before it ended, and he was back to changing oil and rotating tires. The captain's voice came through the speakers. Professional. Calm. Folks, this is Captain Mitchell. We're cleared for takeoff. Flight time to Dallas will be 2 hours and 15 minutes. Weather looks good. Sit back, relax, and we'll have you there before you know it. Marcus listened to the voice and wondered about the man behind it. Military training or civilian track. Had he learned to fly in small Cessnas, or had he screamed through the sky at Mach 2, feeling the jet become an extension of his body? Every input a conversation between man and machine. Diana pulled out her tablet. Spreadsheets. Project timelines. Numbers representing budgets Marcus couldn't fathom. She worked with the aggressive efficiency of someone who needed everyone to know how busy, how important, how valuable her time was. The plane pushed back from the gate. That familiar sensation of movement, of transition, of leaving ground behind. Ethan's hand found Marcus's. Small fingers squeezing tight. The boy loved takeoffs, but still got nervous. Still needed Dad. We're okay, buddy. Marcus squeezed back. Just like always. The 737 taxied toward the runway. Marcus tracked every sound, every movement. The turn onto the taxiway. The pause at the hold short line. The clearance from tower. The alignment on center line. His body remembered all of it. The pre-flight checks. The weight calculations. The weather assessments. The backup plans for the backup plans. Everything that went into putting a machine in the air and bringing it back down with everyone intact. They reached the runway. The engines spooled up, that distinctive whine building to a roar. Ethan pressed back into his seat grinning. This was his favorite part. The brakes released. The plane accelerated. Marcus felt the speed build, the aerodynamics shifting the moment when the wings began to generate lift. Rotation. The nose came up. The ground fell away. They were flying. Dallas disappeared below them, giving way to clouds and sky. Marcus used to own this space, used to command it. Now he was just another passenger, just another person in a seat watching the world he used to inhabit from the outside. Dad. Ethan's whisper was barely audible over the engine noise. Do you think Mom can see us up here? The question landed like shrapnel. Sharp. Unexpected. The kind of wound that didn't bleed externally, but carved you hollow inside. Marcus swallowed hard. Love doesn't need altitude, buddy. She sees you always. From anywhere. Diana glanced over. Just for a second. Something flickered across her face. Curiosity or judgment, or both, then vanished as she returned to her tablet. Marcus felt her assessment. Heard her unspoken conclusion. Single father. Dead wife. Cheap clothes. Probably can't even afford this flight without charity. She wasn't wrong about the last part. The veterans upgrade was the only reason they were in business class instead of squeezed into middle seats in row 38. The flight leveled out. The seatbelt sign dinged off. Diana immediately started another phone call. "I'm reviewing the contract specifications now. They're completely unacceptable. I don't care what Lockheed's reputation is. If they can't meet our standards, they don't get the contract." She emphasized standards like it was a weapon. "We're talking about military equipment, not toys." She practically spat the last word. Ethan flinched, pulled his F-22 closer to his chest, stopped playing entirely. Marcus felt something crack inside him. That careful control he maintained, that determination to stay small and quiet and not make waves, it fractured. His hand covered Ethan's. "Your plane is perfect, buddy. Don't let anyone tell you different." Diana heard. Her eyes flicked over. For a half-second, something like awareness crossed her face. Then it was gone, replaced by the armor of importance. She finished her call and returned to her tablet. Building that wall again, the wall that said, "I'm too busy, too successful, too valuable to be bothered with you." Marcus had met people like her during his years in uniform. Contractors who toured bases with designer luggage, who took selfies with jets they'd never fly, who complained about accommodations and treated service members like obstacles between them and profit margins. They saw the planes, never the people. The flight attendant came through with snacks. Diana got the premium option without asking. Marcus and Ethan got standard pretzels. "Thank you." Marcus smiled, kept it light, kept it easy. Ethan opened his pretzels carefully, eating them one at a time, making them last. He'd learned early that snacks were something you rationed, not something you took for granted. Marcus watched his son and felt the familiar weight of inadequacy. He should give this boy more. Better food, newer clothes, a home without water stains on the ceiling, and heat that only worked when it felt like it. But all he had was love, and presence, and stubborn refusal to let shame make them smaller. Diana's tablet chimed. Another call. "The pilots are asking for upgraded avionics again. Tell them our systems meet minimum specifications. That's sufficient. We're not running a charity. Profit margins matter." She talked about pilots like they were line items, reduced human beings to cost-benefit analyses. Marcus's knuckles went white on the armrest. Those pilots she dismissed so casually, they were flying the planes her company built, trusting the systems she approved, betting their lives on her profit margins. And she talked about them like they were asking for unreasonable luxuries, instead of equipment that might save their lives. "Dad?" Ethan's voice was small. "Are you okay?" Marcus forced his hand to relax. "Yeah, buddy, I'm fine." But he wasn't fine. He was angry. Angry at Diana's casual cruelty. Angry at the system that valued profit over people. Angry at himself for sitting here silent while she diminished everything he'd once been. Except, she didn't know what he'd been. She saw oil stains and Walmart jeans, and made her conclusions. Never looked deeper. Never wondered if maybe, just maybe, the man in the worn jacket had a story worth hearing. The captain's voice returned, but something was different. Marcus heard it immediately, that subtle tightness that controlled tension of a pilot dealing with a problem. "Folks, we've got a minor technical situation here. Nothing to be alarmed about, but we're going to make a precautionary landing at Grayson Air Force Base. Flight attendants, please prepare the cabin for landing." The cabin shifted. Passengers stirred, pulled out phones, started texting loved ones. Diana's composure cracked. Her perfectly maintained facade showed its first real fracture. "Technical situation. What does that mean?" The flight attendant moved through the aisle with practiced calm. "Just a precaution, ma'am. Everything's under control." But Marcus heard what she didn't say. Heard it in the captain's voice, in the flight attendant's too careful reassurance, in the way the plane was already beginning a steeper than normal descent. This wasn't minor. This was serious enough to override standard procedures. Serious enough to make an emergency landing at a military installation instead of routing to a civilian airport. Hydraulics maybe, or engine trouble. Something that made continuing to Dallas too risky. His hands ached to reach for controls that weren't there. His mind was already running through emergency checklists, calculating scenarios, preparing for outcomes. "Dad?" Ethan's voice was scared now. "Is everything okay?" Marcus smoothed the fear from his face. Put on the calm he'd learned in the cockpit, the unshakable steady that made terrified crew members believe they'd survive. "Everything's fine, buddy. We're just taking a different path, like when we take the back roads home." Ethan nodded, trusted Dad completely, the way 7-year-olds did. Diana was gripping her armrest, knuckles white, tablet forgotten. All that importance, all that authority meaningless in the face of physics and mechanical failure. For just a moment, she was human, scared, vulnerable. The descent steepened. Marcus felt the pilot working harder than he should, fighting something, compensating. The engine sounded wrong, not catastrophic, but wrong enough. Other passengers didn't notice, but Marcus did. Every sound, every vibration, every adjustment telegraphed the problem to someone who understood the language. The businessman across the aisle was texting frantically. 2 rows back, someone was crying quietly. Diana had closed her eyes, lips moving in what might have been prayer. Ethan pressed against Marcus's side. "Dad, I'm scared." "I know, buddy." Marcus wrapped his arm around his son. "But the pilots know what they're doing. They train for this. We're going to be fine." He made his voice certain, absolute, even though his own heart was racing, even though memories of Sarah's last flight were screaming in his head. The ground was rushing up now, Texas landscape visible through the window. And there it was, Grayson Air Force Base. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. A door he'd kept locked for 3 years was rattling on its hinges. This was his world. The world he'd walked away from. The world that had decided he was no longer fit for it. "Look, buddy." He pointed out the window. "See those buildings? That's an Air Force base." Ethan's fear was momentarily replaced by wonder. Really? Really? See those planes on the runway? Those are F-22s. Real ones. The hangars, the maintenance facilities, the control tower, the precise geometry of military infrastructure designed for readiness for mission for purpose. Marcus knew every inch of places like this, had lived in them, had belonged to them. The wheels touched down, hard. Harder than a normal landing, but controlled. The pilot had fought for it, and won. The plane decelerated, reverse thrust whining. Emergency vehicles flanking them just in case. Applause broke out. That nervous relief of people who'd been afraid without admitting it. Marcus didn't clap. He was cataloging every sound, every sensation, running post-flight checklists his brain couldn't forget, even after 3 years of changing oil and rotating tires. Diana opened her eyes. Color was returning to her face. The moment of vulnerability was already closing, replaced by something harder. But she'd been scared. Marcus had seen it. Beneath the designer clothes and the profit margins and the casual cruelty, she'd been just another human being confronting mortality. The plane came to a stop. The seatbelt sign dinged off. The captain's voice returned, relief audible now. "Well, folks, we're safely on the ground at Grayson AFB. Maintenance will need to inspect the aircraft. You're welcome to deplane and wait in the passenger terminal. We'll keep you updated." Passengers were already standing, grabbing bags, complaining about delays and missed connections. Diana was on her phone before her seatbelt was off. "I need you to reschedule everything. I don't know how long, just do it." Her fear had lasted maybe 30 seconds. Now she was back to being important. Marcus helped Ethan gather his things. The F-22 model, his small backpack, the half-eaten pretzels. They filed toward the exit. Marcus moved slowly, reluctant in a way he couldn't name. Being back on a military installation felt like visiting his own funeral, like walking through a life that had belonged to someone else. Someone who died the day Sarah did, even though his body kept breathing. They stepped into Texas sun. Heat hit like a physical force. The tarmac shimmered. The smell of jet fuel was immediate and overwhelming. Marcus inhaled deeply. That smell. It was muscle memory. It was home. Ethan's hand found his. "Dad, those planes are so cool." Marcus looked where his son was pointing. 3 F-22s sat in various stages of maintenance. Ground crews swarming them. Pilots probably inside prepping for training flights. His throat tightened. Those were his planes, his world, his language. And he was just a tourist now. Just another passenger in worn-out boots watching from the outside. They filed into the terminal. Basic, functional, metal chairs, vending machines, windows overlooking the flight line. Diana claimed the prime spot immediately, near the outlets, creating a perimeter with her luggage and laptop. Broadcasting importance. Marcus found a quiet corner, where Ethan could play without bothering anyone, where he could sit with his back to the wall and watch the world he used to know move forward without him. Ethan pulled out his F-22, started creating missions on the floor. Soft sound effects, careful not to be too loud, not after what Diana had said. Marcus sat beside him, watching his son play, listening to the imaginary battles where good guys always won, and nobody judged you by your jacket or your paycheck or your worthiness to occupy space. An hour passed, then 90 minutes. Diana's phone calls increased in volume and frequency. She'd positioned herself as the unofficial spokesperson for passenger grievances, demanding updates from personnel who had no authority to give them, threatening legal action, making everyone uncomfortable with her sense of entitlement. Marcus watched this performance with detachment. He'd seen actual emergencies, real crises where calm and competence mattered more than volume. Diana was terrified beneath the anger, terrified of being powerless, of being subject to forces beyond her control. Wealth couldn't fix a broken airplane. Status couldn't override physics. So she did what people like her always did, tried to buy her way out with noise and indignation. Ethan had abandoned his toy for the windows, pressing his hands against glass, watching an F-22 crew work with choreographed precision. Marcus stood beside his son, couldn't help himself. His attention was captured by details he couldn't stop cataloging. The stabilizer angles, the weapons bay check, the intake inspection. Every movement purposeful. Every step part of a larger dance he knew by heart. "That's the coolest plane ever, Dad." Ethan's voice was pure wonder. Marcus smiled despite everything. "Yeah, buddy, it really is." Behind them, Diana's latest phone call was reaching crescendo. "I don't care about protocol. I have a meeting with Pentagon procurement I cannot miss. Surely someone here has authority to arrange alternative transport." She'd cornered a young lieutenant, using the full force of her corporate authority on someone who probably made $30,000 a year. The lieutenant maintained professional composure. "Ma'am, I understand your frustration, but we need to follow proper safety procedures. Do you know who I am?" Diana's voice cut through the terminal. "My company supplies half the avionics systems your Air Force uses. I could make one phone call and—" She stopped mid-sentence. Marcus felt it before he saw it. That shift in the air. That change in energy. 3 pilots had entered the terminal. Flight suits. Calm confidence. The bearing of people who'd been trained to handle crisis. Marcus felt himself straighten involuntarily. Muscle memory. He knew these men. Not individually, but collectively. The culture. The training. The unspoken language. The lead pilot, a major with gray, threading his dark hair, scanned the terminal with eyes trained to assess threats and opportunities in milliseconds. His gaze passed over Diana, over the complaining passengers, over the young lieutenant, and stopped dead on Marcus. Something flickered in the major's expression. Recognition. But that was impossible. Marcus didn't know him, hadn't served with him. Then the major's eyes dropped to Marcus's wrist, to the steel band that had shifted during the wait. Just enough visible. Just enough to read the engraving. Hawk 1. The major's entire demeanor transformed. He said something quick to his companions. Then he walked directly toward Marcus with purpose. Marcus felt his heart rate spike. That old fight-or-flight response. The one that never quite went away. Ethan sensed the shift, moved closer, protective instinct. The Major stopped at respectful distance. His eyes moved from the steel band to Marcus's face and back. When he spoke, his voice carried respect that made the entire terminal go quiet. "Sir, I don't mean to intrude, but that call sign on your wrist, is it yours, or are you wearing someone's memorial band?" The question hung in the air. Respectful. Direct. Giving Marcus the option to deflect. Around them, the terminal had gone silent. Diana had stopped mid-complaint. The young lieutenant was staring. Marcus's throat felt like sandpaper. He hadn't claimed that identity aloud in 3 years. Hadn't said those words since the day they handed him discharge papers and told him broken men couldn't be trusted with jets. But something about this moment, standing on military ground, with his son beside him and that F-22 visible through the window, made lying feel like the worst kind of betrayal. His voice came out rough, scarred by disuse. "It's mine." 2 words, simple. True. Hawk 1. The Major's face transformed. Respect. Awe. Something deeper. He straightened to attention. And saluted. Marcus's hand came up slowly. 3 years of civilian life fought against 15 years of training, but training won. His return salute was automatic, precise muscle memory taking over where conscious thought faltered. The terminal had become something else entirely. No longer civilian space, but military territory, governed by different rules operating on a frequency most of the passengers couldn't hear but could definitely feel. The Major held his salute for a long moment before lowering his hand. His 2 companions had moved closer now, casual demeanor evaporating like morning fog. "Sir, it's an honor." The Major's voice carried weight. "I'm Major Ryan Castellano. This is Captain Lisa Chen and Lieutenant Colonel James Morrison." The captain looked like she was seeing a legend step out of a history book. The lieutenant colonel had gone very still, his eyes sharp with recognition. "I flew my qualification run with Captain Sarah Hayes," Major Castellano continued. "She talked about you constantly, said you were the best tactical mind she'd ever worked with." The name hit Marcus like a physical blow. Sarah, his wife, his wingman. The woman who died while he sat grounded listening to her voice on the radio, powerless to help. Ethan pressed against his father's leg, confused by what was happening but understanding it was important. Marcus's throat worked. "Captain Hayes was my wife." The silence that followed carried the weight of understanding. These people knew loss. They'd all known someone who didn't come back. They carried names that lived forever in the spaces between missions. Major Castellano's expression shifted. "I didn't know, sir. I'm sorry. We lost one of the best that day." "We lost 2, Lieutenant Colonel Morrison said quietly. His voice was gentle but firm. "One to death, one to grief. The Air Force lost 2 exceptional officers." Marcus felt those words land somewhere deep. Recognition that his departure hadn't been cowardice. That sometimes the bravest thing a warrior could do was lay down their weapon and learn to live again. Diana was staring now, really staring. Her phone hung forgotten in her hand. The contempt from earlier had transformed into something that looked like shock, mixed with dawning horror. "Sir?" Captain Chen spoke up. "What brings you to Grayson?" Marcus gestured vaguely toward the terminal. "Flight had mechanical issues. We're waiting to continue to Dallas." The pilots exchanged glances. Some unspoken communication passed between them. Sir Major Castellano said, "Would you and your son like to see the flight line?" "We have about an hour before our next brief. Some of the squadron would appreciate meeting you." It was phrased as a question, but Marcus heard the deeper offer. A temporary return to the world he'd left. A chance to show Ethan who his father used to be. Marcus looked down at his son. Ethan was staring up at him with wonder and confusion, trying to piece together why these pilots were treating his dad. his dad who fixed cars and shopped at Goodwill like someone important. "Want to see a real fighter jet up close, buddy?" Ethan's response was immediate, emphatic. "Yes." The pilot smiled. That genuine warmth military personnel reserved for their own and for children. The two groups they were sworn to protect. "Outstanding." Major Castellano turned to his companions. "Chen Radio Rodriguez. Tell her we're bringing a VIP to the flight line." "Copy that, sir." As they moved toward the exit, Marcus heard Diana's voice behind him, shrill and demanding. "Wait. I need to speak with someone about transportation. This is unacceptable. I have critical meetings." The young lieutenant she'd been berating looked past her, watching Marcus leave with the pilots. Something in his expression had changed. He'd seen the salute, heard the respect in the major's voice. When he turned back to Diana, his professional courtesy had cooled considerably. "Ma'am, I'll see what I can find out. But you'll need to wait like everyone else." The heat outside was brutal. Marcus felt it immediately, that Texas sun that could cook you through your clothes. But underneath the discomfort was something else. The smell of jet fuel, hot concrete, aviation hydraulic fluid, the scent of purpose. Ethan bounced on his toes, exhaustion forgotten. "Dad, we're really going to see the planes." "Really, buddy?" Captain Chen had jogged ahead, speaking into her radio. Marcus caught fragments. "Hawk 1. Yes, the Hawk 1. 7-year-old son. Copy that." The F-22 was more impressive up close. Angular lines designed to defeat radar, its shape a threat to enemies and a promise to allies. The ground crew paused their work as the pilots approached with Marcus and Ethan in tow. The crew chief, a woman in her 40s with sergeant stripes and a name tape reading Rodriguez, looked up from her checklist. She studied Marcus for a long moment, her eyes taking in the worn clothes, the careful way he held himself, the steel band on his wrist. Then she set down her clipboard and walked over. "Hawk 1. It wasn't a question. Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. Rodriguez's expression shifted into something deeper. "Chief Master Sergeant Maria Rodriguez. I was crew chief for tail number 447 during the Syrian deployment." She paused. "You brought her back with half the hydraulics dead and 3 feet of wing missing. I thought it was impossible, sir." The memory rushed back. Cockpit alarms screaming. Sarah on the radio talking him through it because she could read his flying better than anyone. 6 crew members' lives depending on him fighting physics and winning. When he'd finally touched down, surrounded by emergency vehicles, he'd sat in the cockpit, unable to move. Sarah had climbed up and pulled him out herself, held him while he shook. 3 months later, she was gone. Marcus forced the words out. "You kept that bird flying, Chief. I was just steering." Rodriguez shook her head. "With respect, sir, that's bullshit. You made that plane do things it wasn't designed to do." She looked at Ethan. "This your boy?" "Yes, ma'am, Ethan." Rodriguez crouched to Ethan's level. "You like jets, kid?" Ethan nodded, speechless. "This one's special, tail number 447. She gestured to the aircraft behind her. "Your dad flew this exact plane, saved a lot of lives in it too." Ethan's eyes went huge. He looked at his father, then back at Rodriguez, then at the F-22. "My dad flew this one." "He really did." Rodriguez stood. "Want to see the cockpit?" The answer was written all over Ethan's face. Rodriguez's team pulled over a maintenance ladder. Major Castellano helped lift Ethan onto the first rung. "Take it slow, buddy. We got you." Ethan climbed with careful determination, his father's hand steady on his back. The canopy was open for maintenance and Ethan disappeared into the cockpit like he was entering a cathedral. Marcus followed his body, remembering every handhold, the exact placement of hands and feet, the climb up, the slide into the seat, the way the cockpit wrapped around you, making you part of the machine. Ethan was touching everything. The stick, the throttle, the display screens. His hands were reverent, like he understood he was touching something sacred. "Dad, Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. "You really flew this?" Marcus settled on the cockpit edge close enough for safety, far enough to let his son explore. "Yeah, buddy, I really did." "Were you scared?" The question every child asks. The one that deserves truth. Terrified every single time. But being scared doesn't mean you don't do the thing. It means you do it anyway, because people are counting on you. Ethan was quiet for a moment, processing. Then he said, "Like how you take care of me, even when it's hard." Marcus felt his throat close. Exactly like that. Below them, more people had gathered. Other pilots, maintenance crews. Word was spreading. Hawk 1 was here. Diana had followed them onto the tarmac, keeping her distance, but unable to look away. She stood there in her designer clothes, completely out of place in this environment. Marcus could see it on her face, the recognition that money meant nothing here. That the value system she'd built her life on didn't translate. That she'd spent 2 hours treating someone like garbage who these people honored. Rodriguez called up, "Sir Colonel Patterson wants to know if you'll come to the ready room. The squadron would like to meet you." Marcus looked at his son, at the joy on Ethan's face, at the opportunity to show his boy something true about who his father had been. "We'll be right down, Chief." They climbed down carefully. Ethan was talking a mile a minute. "Dad, that was so cool. The controls and the screens and everything. You really knew how to fly all that." "I did, buddy." "That's so awesome." Lieutenant Colonel Morrison stepped forward. "Sir, if you'll follow me, it's just a short walk." The walk to the ready room felt like traveling backward through time. Marcus's feet found paths his mind had forgotten. Muscle memory navigating a world he'd tried to leave behind. Ethan held his hand, still bouncing with excitement. The toy F-22 was forgotten in his pocket. He'd seen the real thing now. Touched it. Sat in the cockpit his father had commanded. The ready room doors opened and heads turned. Maybe 20 pilots inside, some in flight suits preparing for missions, others in duty uniforms. Different ages, different ranks, but all sharing that particular bearing of people trained to handle the impossible. "Attention!" someone called. The room snapped to focus with military precision. Lieutenant Colonel Morrison held up a hand. "At ease. Everyone, this is Marcus Hayes. Call sign Hawk 1. Some of you have studied his missions. All of you have benefited from his tactical innovations." The silence that followed was heavy with recognition. These people knew the name, knew the call sign, knew the legend. A young lieutenant raised her hand tentatively. "Sir, is it true you completed the red flag exercise with a 48-0 kill ratio?" Marcus blinked. He hadn't thought about that exercise in years. 48-0. But that was different world, different time. "Sir." A captain stood up. She was maybe 30, with sharp eyes and pilot's confidence. "The defensive maneuver you developed, the Hawk roll, it saved my life last year. Training accident, hydraulic failure. My instructor made me practice it until I could do it in my sleep. When my systems failed, muscle memory took over." She came to attention, saluted. "Thank you, sir." Marcus felt something crack inside him. A dam he'd built from grief and shame, and the conviction that he'd failed by surviving when Sarah hadn't. Others began standing, one by one, until the entire room was at attention. Ethan pressed against his father's leg, overwhelmed, but understanding something important was happening. "I was just doing my job," Marcus managed. "Same as all of you." Major Castellano shook his head. "Sir, that's exactly the point. You did your job better than anyone thought possible. Then you walked away when you had to. And you're still standing, still raising that boy right. That's not failure, sir, that's victory." The words landed like a fighter jet touching down after a long mission. Solid, real, true. A colonel entered his presence, shifting the atmosphere from informal to official. Someone briefed him quickly, and his expression transformed to respect. He crossed to Marcus, hand extended. "Colonel David Patterson, Squadron Commander. It's an honor, Captain Hayes. Marcus shook his hand, noting the colonel used his rank despite civilian clothes. Just Marcus is fine, sir. I'm not active anymore. Patterson shook his head firmly. Once a captain, always a captain. That doesn't change. He glanced down at Ethan. This your son? Ethan. He's 7. Patterson crouched to Ethan's level. Want to be a pilot like your dad? Ethan nodded, then added firmly, like my dad and my mom. Patterson's expression flickered with understanding. Your mom was a pilot too. Marcus's hand tightened on Ethan's shoulder. Captain Sarah Hayes. She died in a training accident 3 years ago. The room's energy shifted, celebration giving way to something more solemn. These people understood loss in their bones. They'd all known someone who didn't come back. All carried names etched in memory. Patterson stood slowly, bearing formal. Captain Hayes pioneered electronic warfare protocols we still use. Her work saved countless lives. I'm sorry for your loss, Captain. The Air Force lost 2 exceptional officers that day. The recognition washed over Marcus, not just of Sarah's death, but of his survival. Of the fact that he'd chosen to live instead of dying slowly behind a desk. Patterson made a decision. Captain Hayes, would you speak to my pilots, share perspective that doesn't come from training manuals? Marcus hesitated. In the air, he'd had procedures, protocols. Here, he just had his truth. I'm not sure what I could tell them, sir. Tell them about after, Patterson said. After the career ends and you have to figure out who you are when flying isn't an option. They need to see there is an after, and that it's worth fighting for. Ethan settled into a chair clutching his toy jet. Marcus stood at the front of the room feeling more exposed than he ever had in a cockpit. 20 pairs of eyes watched him, waiting. I never wanted to stop flying. His voice came out rough. I left because nightmares got so bad I couldn't trust myself in a cockpit. Because panic attacks made me a liability. Because losing Sarah broke something in me that medical discharge papers made official. The room was silent. No judgment, just attention. I blamed myself, even though the accident review said I couldn't have prevented it. She was doing a routine training flight. The aircraft malfunctioned. She did everything right. And she still died. Marcus's voice cracked. He didn't try to hide it. For 6 months after I couldn't sleep, couldn't look at the sky without seeing her jet going down. I had a choice. Stay and ride a desk watch others do what I loved, or leave. Try to build something new. Focus on my son. He looked at Ethan. I chose him. I chose being present over being important. Some days that choice feels like the hardest mission I ever flew. I work as a mechanic now. Fix cars for $14 an hour. Live in an apartment where the heat doesn't always work. Shop at thrift stores. Sometimes we eat cereal for dinner. He let that reality hang in the air. By every measure, society uses I'm a failure. I lost my career, lost respect, lost the identity I'd built my entire adult life around. Major Castellano started to object, but Marcus held up a hand. But here's what I learned. Failure is just life, viewed from the wrong angle. I might have lost my career, but I gained being there when Ethan takes his first steps into whatever future he chooses. I might have lost respect from people who only value you for what you do, but I gained the ability to see who someone really is beneath surface judgments. He looked around the room, at the young faces, the eager pilots, the ones who still believed they were invincible. Hold on to this as long as you can. Fly every mission like it's your last because one day it will be. But remember, there's life after flying. It's not easier. Not what I'd choose if the world gave me different options. But it's worth it. He gestured to Ethan. And sometimes, if you're lucky, it comes with a co-pilot who makes the turbulence worthwhile. Applause broke out. Not polite ceremony, but genuine appreciation. These pilots understood sacrifice, understood loss, understood that courage sometimes meant continuing when everything in you wanted to quit. As the applause faded, Colonel Patterson stepped forward. "Captain Hayes, I'd like to make you an offer. We have a civilian consultant program for pilots who've left active duty but still have expertise we need. You'd help with tactical development. Maybe run scenarios with newer pilots. Part-time, flexible around your current job and your son's schedule." Patterson's voice was firm. "We need people who've lived it, who can teach from experience, not just theory. Interested?" Marcus felt the offer land, solid, real, possible, not flying, would never be flying again, but a way back into the world he loved, recognition that his knowledge still had value. He thought about Ethan, about providing better than broken heat and cereal dinners, about showing his son that setbacks weren't endings. He thought about Sarah, about what she'd say. She'd tell him to take it, to stop punishing himself with poverty because he'd survived when she hadn't. "Yes, sir. I'm interested." Patterson's smile was genuine. "Outstanding. We'll get the paperwork started. Chen, coordinate with Captain Hayes on the details." "Yes, sir." The room gradually returned to normal operations. But pilots kept approaching Marcus, introducing themselves, sharing stories about how his innovations had filtered through their training, how the hawk roll had become standard evasive protocol, how his tactical scenarios were still required study at Nellis. A young captain shook his hand. "Sir, your mission recordings, we watch them in advanced training. The way you read enemy formations anticipated their moves 3 steps ahead. It's like watching someone speak a different language." Marcus felt something loosening in his chest, the tight knot of shame and inadequacy he'd carried for 3 years. These people saw value he'd convinced himself didn't exist anymore. Rodriguez appeared in the doorway. "Sir, your flight's been cleared. They're boarding in 20 minutes. 20 minutes. That's all they had left in this world before returning to the civilian one. Patterson shook Marcus's hand again. "We'll be in touch within 48 hours. And Captain, thank you. For your service. For your sacrifice. For showing these pilots what strength really looks like." The walk back to the terminal felt different. Marcus wasn't invisible anymore. Wasn't the man in oil-stained clothes people dismissed. He was Hawk 1. A call sign that meant something. Ethan held his hand quiet now, processing everything he'd learned about his father in the last 2 hours. The terminal came into view. And there, standing near the entrance, was Diana. She'd been waiting. Her phone was nowhere in sight. Her armor of importance had cracked, revealing something raw underneath. As Marcus and Ethan approached, she stepped forward. Her voice had lost its edge entirely. "Mr. Hayes, I owe you an apology." Marcus stopped. Waited. Not making it easy. Ethan pressed closer to his father's side, remembering her earlier cruelty. Diana continued, words clearly difficult. "I judged you based on superficial things, your clothes, your circumstances. I was cruel to you and your son without cause. I was wrong." It was corporate apology, rehearsed, designed to mitigate liability. But underneath it, Marcus heard something real. Actual shame. Actual recognition of harm. "You didn't know," he said simply. "That's not an excuse. I should have treated you with basic human decency, regardless of who you were or what you wore. I made assumptions. I was wrong." She looked at Ethan. "I'm sorry I made you feel bad about your toy. It's clear now it means something special to you." Ethan didn't respond, just held his F-22 closer. Marcus said quietly, "Ethan, go check those model planes over there." When his son was out of earshot, Marcus turned his full attention to Diana. His voice was calm, but firm. "You want to know what bothers me most? Not that you were rude to me. I'm used to that. But you were unkind to my son. You made a 7-year-old boy feel unwelcome and ashamed. You did it casually. Because in your world, people like us don't matter enough to consider. Diana's face flushed. I know. I'm not interested in excuses, Marcus interrupted. But I am interested in whether you'll actually change. Whether seeing me saluted will change how you treat the next person in worn clothes, or if you'll just file this away as a special case and go back to judging people by their bank accounts. It was harsh, but she'd hurt his child. Diana met his eyes. For the first time, he saw something genuine. You're right about everything. I've built my identity around being superior, used wealth as the only metric that mattered because it's quantifiable and favorable to me. She paused. I've probably done to hundreds what I did to you today, and I never thought about it because they couldn't fight back. Because people like you stay quiet and small and don't make waves. Marcus said nothing. Let her sit with it. I'd like to say this transformed me completely, Diana continued. But that would be another superficial response. Real change takes time. But I can start by doing better in the next interaction. And the next. Until treating people with dignity becomes automatic instead of something I have to remember. It was the most honest thing she'd said all day. Marcus found himself nodding. That's all any of us can do. Start where we are. Try to be better tomorrow. The gate agent's voice crackled over the PA. Flight 22847 to Dallas is now boarding. All passengers please proceed to Gate 3. Diana pulled out a business card. My company is always looking for consultants with real operational experience. The work is civilian but meaningful. If you're interested, call me. The pay is substantially more than $14 an hour. She handed him the card, didn't wait for a response, just turned and walked toward the gate. Ethan returned to his father's side. Is that the mean lady? Marcus looked at the card, then at his son. Yeah, buddy, but maybe she's trying to be less mean. It was the kindest interpretation, possibly more generous than Diana deserved. But Marcus had learned that people were complicated, that everyone was fighting battles you couldn't see, that grace was sometimes the hardest and most important thing you could offer. They boarded the plane, same seats, same leather that cost more than rent. But everything had shifted. The flight attendant smiled warmly. Welcome back. I heard you got to see some amazing planes. We did. Ethan was glowing. My dad flew them real F-22s. That's wonderful. Her smile was genuine now. Your dad must be pretty special. He is, Ethan said with absolute certainty. Marcus felt his eyes sting. He blinked hard, focused on getting settled. Diana was already in her seat. She glanced over once. No contempt, no judgment, just acknowledgement. The flight to Dallas was smooth, routine. Everything the first leg should have been. But Marcus wasn't the same man who'd boarded in Houston. Something had shifted. Some weight he'd been carrying had been set down. Not all of it. He still had nightmares. Still missed Sarah with an ache that never quite faded. Still struggled with inadequacy and shame. But now he also had this recognition that his worth wasn't determined by his paycheck. That the man he'd been wasn't erased by the circumstances he lived in now. That Hawk 1 wasn't dead, just different. Ethan dozed against his shoulder, exhausted by excitement. His toy F-22 was clutched in his hand, but looser now. He'd seen the real thing, touched it, understood it better. Marcus looked out the window at clouds and sky. His domain once. Foreign territory now. But maybe that was okay. Maybe you could lose something precious and still build a life worth living. Maybe you could fail by one measure and succeed by another. Maybe you could be broken and whole at the same time. The steel band on his wrist caught light. Hawk 1. It didn't define him anymore, but it was part of him. A chapter in a story still being written. The landing in Dallas was perfect, smooth, professional. Everything you wanted from a pilot who knew their craft. They collected their single duffel from baggage claim, made their way to long-term parking. Marcus's truck was 15 years old, with a replaced transmission and Faith holding it together. It started on the third try. Dad. Ethan was awake now, arranging his jet on the dashboard. Can we go back there sometime to see the planes? Marcus thought about Colonel Patterson's offer, about consulting work, about returning to Grayson not as a visitor, but as someone who belonged. Yeah, buddy, I think we can. The drive home took 90 minutes. Their apartment complex was beige and fading, but it was home. Marcus carried Ethan upstairs, one arm around his son, the duffel over his other shoulder. Their apartment was exactly as they'd left it. Small, clean, furniture from thrift stores. But home. He tucked Ethan into bed, still mostly dressed, too tired for pajamas. Dad? Ethan's voice was sleepy. Those pilots really respect you. They respect what I used to do, buddy. No. Ethan's eyes were serious. Sarah's eyes. They respect you. Who you are now. I could tell. Marcus felt his throat tighten. Get some sleep, buddy. Big day tomorrow. Love you, Dad. Love you too. In the living room, Marcus sat on the sagging couch, pulled out his phone. 2 missed calls from his boss at Lopez Auto, probably wondering why he'd missed his shift. A text from his landlord about rent. Nothing from anyone who'd called just to check on him. He'd systematically pushed everyone away after leaving the Air Force. Easier to be alone than watch pity replace respect. But now, he wondered if that had been the right choice. He looked at Diana's business card, then at the steel band on his wrist. Tomorrow he'd call Colonel Patterson. Start the paperwork for consulting work. Tomorrow he'd face his boss. Explain the absence. Tomorrow he'd begin building something new from the pieces of today. Tonight he was just tired. Sleep found him on the couch. His phone slipped from his hand. He dreamed of flying. But not nightmares. In this dream he was teaching Ethan to handle controls. Small hands on the stick while Marcus's hands hovered nearby, ready but not taking over. Sarah was there too, not as a ghost, but as presence. Smiling. Proud. The sky was clear and infinite. The jet responded to Ethan's touch like it had been waiting for him. When Marcus woke 3 hours later, the dream clung like morning mist, dissipating slowly but leaving the sense that maybe the future didn't have to be defined only by loss. Maybe it could be defined by what came next, by choices made from here forward, by refusal to let one chapter's ending dictate the entire book's worth. He looked at the steel band on his wrist. Hawk 1. The call sign meant something different now, not memorial to who he'd been, but reminder that identity could expand rather than contract, that skills learned in one arena could transfer to another, that the end of one mission simply meant the beginning of the next. Marcus woke to Ethan standing beside the couch, toy jet in hand, watching him with those serious gray eyes. You fell asleep out here again, Dad. Yeah, buddy, I did. Marcus sat up, his back protesting. The couch wasn't meant for sleeping. What time is it? 7:30. I made myself cereal. 7:30. Marcus was supposed to be at Lopez Auto at 7. He grabbed his phone. 3 more missed calls from his boss. A text that just said, "Call me." Stay here. Okay, I need to make a phone call. Ethan nodded, climbing onto the couch with his jet. Marcus stepped into the tiny kitchen and dialed. His boss, Frank Lopez, answered on the second ring. Marcus, where the hell were you yesterday? I'm sorry, Frank. My flight back from Houston had mechanical problems. We got diverted to a military base. I couldn't get back in time. Silence on the other end. Then Frank's voice tight with irritation. You know we had 3 cars scheduled. Johnson had to stay late to cover your bay. I know. I'm sorry. It won't happen again. It better not. You're a good mechanic, Marcus, but you're not irreplaceable. I need people I can count on. The words stung because they were fair. Frank had given him a job when nobody else would. Had looked past the gaps in his resume, the medical discharge, the 3 years of nothing. I understand. I'll be there in 45 minutes. Make it 30. We're already behind. The line went dead. Marcus stood in the kitchen, phone in hand, feeling the familiar weight of inadequacy settle back onto his shoulders. For a few hours yesterday, he'd been someone. Hawk 1. Respected. Valued. Now he was just Marcus Hayes, unreliable employee scrambling to keep a $14 an hour job. Dad? Ethan appeared in the doorway. Are you in trouble? Marcus forced a smile. No, buddy, just work stuff. I need to get you to school and get to the shop. Fast morning. They moved through their routine with practiced efficiency. Ethan got dressed while Marcus made coffee in the ancient pot that only worked if you hit it just right. They were out the door in 15 minutes. The elementary school was 10 minutes away. Marcus pulled up to the drop-off lane with 5 minutes to spare. Love you, buddy. Have a good day. Ethan unbuckled but didn't get out. Dad, yesterday was really cool, with the planes and the pilots. Yeah, it was. They treated you like you were important. Marcus felt his throat tighten. I used to be important, Ethan. In that world. That was a long time ago. You're still important to me. Ethan said it simply. Matter of fact. Then he grabbed his backpack and was gone, running toward the school entrance. Marcus sat in the drop-off lane watching his son disappear into the building. Other parents were dropping off kids. Soccer moms in SUVs, business dads in sedans. Nobody looked at his battered truck twice except to wonder when he'd move along. He made it to Lopez Auto with 2 minutes to spare. The shop was already busy. 3 cars in the bays, another 2 waiting in the lot. Frank was in the office doing paperwork. He looked up when Marcus entered. Bay 3, transmission job, customers waiting. Got it. Marcus changed into his work coveralls. The fabric was stained from 3 years of oil changes and brake jobs and transmission rebuilds. He grabbed his tools and headed to Bay 3. The car was a Honda Accord, 10 years old, transmission slipping. The customer was a woman in her 50s sitting in the waiting area with a coffee and her phone. Marcus slid under the car and got to work. This was his world now. Not cockpits and tactics and flying machines worth $80 million. Just worn-out Hondas and tight budgets and customers who needed their cars fixed cheap and fast. His hands knew this work. Knew how to diagnose problems, source parts, make repairs that would last. It was honest work. Important work in its own way. But it wasn't flying. 2 hours later, he was covered in transmission fluid finishing up the Honda when his phone buzzed in his pocket. He wiped his hands and checked it. Unknown number. Texas area code. Hello. Captain Hayes. This is Captain Lisa Chen from Grayson AFB. We met yesterday. Marcus's heart rate kicked up. Yes, Captain, I remember. Sir Colonel Patterson asked me to coordinate the consultant paperwork with you. Do you have a few minutes to discuss details? Marcus looked around the shop. Frank was in the office. Johnson was in Bay 1. Nobody was paying attention to him. Yes, ma'am, I can talk. Outstanding, sir. The position would be part-time, approximately 20 hours a week. Schedule is flexible. You'd coordinate with the training officer based on your availability. Compensation is $75 an hour. Marcus nearly dropped the phone. 75. Yes, sir. Standard rate for civilian tactical consultants with your level of experience. Does that work for you? $75 an hour. 20 hours a week. That was $1,500 a week. $6,000 a month. More than Marcus made in 3 months at Lopez Auto. Sir, are you still there? Yes, sorry. Yes, that works. Excellent. I'm emailing you the initial paperwork now. We'll need background verification, but that should be straightforward given your service record. Any questions? Marcus had 1,000 questions, but he managed to ask the important one. When would this start? We're hoping within 2 weeks. Sooner if paperwork clears faster. We're running a new pilot training cycle next month, and Colonel Patterson wants you involved. Understood. Thank you, Captain. Thank you, sir. We're honored to have you join the team. The call ended. Marcus stood in Bay 3 transmission fluid, dripping from his coveralls, phone in his hand, trying to process what had just happened. $75 an hour. 20 hours a week. Flexible schedule. Working with pilots again. Teaching. Sharing what he knew. A way back. Marcus. Frank's voice cut through his thoughts. Customers asking about that Honda. We done? Marcus shook himself. Yeah, just finishing up. He completed the transmission job, tested it, signed off on the paperwork. The customer paid and left satisfied. Marcus went through the rest of his shift on autopilot. Oil change on a Camry. Brake job on a Ford pickup. Diagnostic on a Chevy that wouldn't start. His hands did the work while his mind was elsewhere. At Grayson, in ready rooms, teaching pilots who actually wanted to learn what he knew. At 3 o'clock, Frank called him into the office. Sit down, Marcus. Marcus sat. This felt ominous. Frank leaned back in his chair. You've worked here 3 years. You're good at what you do. Reliable mostly. Customers like you. Thank you. But I'm running a business. I need people who are all in. Yesterday you missed a shift. Last month you left early twice for Ethan's school stuff. Month before that you called in sick. Marcus's chest tightened. Frank, I'm not firing you, but I need to know if you're committed, because if you're not, I need to find someone who is. This was it. The moment Marcus had been dreading. The moment when his two worlds collided and he had to choose. Frank, I appreciate everything you've done for me. You gave me a job when I needed it. You've been patient with my situation. But I got an offer yesterday. Consulting work with the Air Force. Better pay. Flexible hours so I can be there for Ethan. Frank's expression didn't change. When do you start? 2 weeks, maybe sooner. You giving me 2 weeks' notice? Marcus hadn't thought that far ahead, but he realized he should. It was the right thing to do. Yes, if that works for you. Frank nodded slowly. All right, I appreciate the notice. But Marcus, if this Air Force thing doesn't work out, you call me. I'll find a spot for you. Something in Marcus's chest loosened. Thank you, Frank. That means a lot. You're a good guy, Marcus. Good dad. You deserve a break. Marcus left Lopez Auto that afternoon feeling lighter than he had in years. He picked up Ethan from after-school care and drove home. On the way, he stopped at the grocery store. Actually stopped instead of driving past because the budget was too tight. What are we getting, Dad? Ethan asked as they walked through the automatic doors. Dinner. Real dinner. Not cereal. He bought chicken and vegetables and rice. Ingredients for an actual meal. Spent $40 without wincing. It felt reckless and wonderful. At home, he cooked while Ethan did homework at the kitchen table. The apartment filled with the smell of food. Real food. And for the first time in years, Marcus felt like maybe they were building something that looked like normal life. Dad, this is really good, Ethan said around a mouthful of chicken. Thanks, buddy. Are we celebrating something? Marcus hesitated. He didn't want to get Ethan's hopes up if the consulting job fell through, but he also didn't want to lie. Maybe. I got some good news about work today, but it's not final yet, so let's not count on it. Is it about the Air Force stuff from yesterday? Yeah, they want me to help teach pilots, part-time. Ethan's eyes lit up. That's so cool. You should totally do it. Marcus smiled. I'm going to, buddy. I'm going to. That night after Ethan was in bed, Marcus sat on the couch with his laptop. The email from Captain Chen had arrived with attachments. Background check forms. Contract details. Direct deposit paperwork. He filled them out methodically. Name. Social security number. Service dates. Discharge status. There was a section asking about medical conditions. Marcus stared at it for a long time. PTSD. Panic disorder. Major depressive episode. All documented in his medical discharge papers. All part of why the Air Force had decided he was no longer fit for duty. Would they disqualify him now? Would they decide he was too broken to teach even if he couldn't fly? He typed it in. All of it. If they were going to reject him, better to know now. He hit send and closed the laptop. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Marcus, this is Diana Sinclair. I wanted to follow up on our conversation yesterday. If you're interested in consulting opportunities with Vertex Defense, I'd like to set up a meeting. No pressure. Just wanted to extend the offer formally. Marcus stared at the text. 2 offers in 2 days, both from worlds that had ignored him for 3 years. He typed back, "Thank you for reaching out. I've accepted a consulting position with the Air Force, but I appreciate the offer." Her response came quickly. "Congratulations. They're lucky to have you. And Marcus, I meant what I said about changing. I'm working on it." He set the phone down, looked around the apartment, at the water-stained ceiling and the furniture from Goodwill and the worn carpet. This place had been enough when he thought it was all he deserved, when he believed broken men only got broken lives. But maybe he'd been wrong. Maybe broken men could heal, could rebuild, could find new missions that mattered. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur. Marcus worked his shifts at Lopez Auto, training his replacement, a kid fresh out of technical school, who reminded Marcus of himself at 20. "The key to transmissions is patience," Marcus told him. "Take your time, double-check everything. The work is tedious, but it matters." The kid nodded, eager to learn. In the evenings, Marcus studied. Captain Chen had sent him current tactical manuals, updated procedures, new technology he needed to familiarize himself with. The Air Force had evolved in 3 years. He needed to catch up. Ethan helped without knowing he was helping. Would quiz Marcus on aircraft specifications while they ate dinner. Would draw pictures of F-22s and label the parts based on what his dad taught him. "Dad, what's this thing called?" "That's the vertical stabilizer. It helps control yaw." "What's yaw and yaw?" "Left and right movement. Like when you turn your bike." "Oh, that makes sense." These moments reminded Marcus why he'd left, why he'd chosen fatherhood over career. Ethan was 7 now, growing fast, soaking up knowledge like a sponge. Every evening they spent together was an evening Marcus hadn't missed. Every homework session, every dinner, every bedtime story, he'd been there for all of it. Sarah hadn't gotten that. She'd missed everything after Ethan turned 4. Would never see him turn 8 or graduate elementary school or learn to drive or any of the 1,000 milestones ahead. But Marcus would. He'd be there for every single one. On Friday of the 2nd week, Captain Chen called again. "Sir, your background check cleared. Colonel Patterson would like you to start Monday." "Is that feasible?" "Monday, 3 days away." "Yes, ma'am. That works." "Outstanding. Report to the main gate at 0800. They'll have your base access ready. Dress as business casual, no uniform required. You'll be meeting with the training officer first, then observing some simulator sessions." "Understood. Thank you, Captain." Marcus hung up and sat in his truck outside Ethan's school waiting for dismissal. His hands were shaking slightly. Nerves, excitement, fear. What if he wasn't good enough anymore? What if 3 years away had eroded the knowledge that used to come naturally? What if the pilots took one look at him and saw what Diana had seen, a washed-up mechanic pretending to be someone he used to be? The school bell rang. Kids poured out. Ethan appeared, backpack bouncing, running toward the truck. "Dad, guess what? I got 100 on my math test." Marcus's anxiety evaporated. "That's awesome, buddy. I'm so proud of you." Ethan climbed in, grinning. "Can we celebrate?" "Absolutely. What do you want?" "Ice cream." "Ice cream it is." They went to the ice cream shop near the apartment. Marcus got vanilla. Ethan got chocolate with gummy bears. They sat at a sticky table and ate while Ethan chattered about school and friends and a science project about planets. "Dad, did you ever see Earth from space? Not from space, buddy, but from really high up, yeah. When you're at 60,000 feet, you can see the curve of the Earth." "That's so cool. I want to see that someday." "Maybe you will." "Will you teach me to fly?" The question caught Marcus off guard. I can't fly anymore, Ethan. Remember. But you could teach me. Like when I'm older. You know how to do it. Marcus felt emotion clog his throat. Yeah. When you're older, if you still want to, I'll teach you everything I know. Promise. Promise. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios. What would he teach first? How would he present material? What if the pilots asked questions he couldn't answer? At 2 in the morning, he gave up on sleep. Made coffee. Opened his laptop. Reviewed tactical manuals until his eyes burned. At 5, he showered. Put on the nicest clothes he owned, khakis, and a button-down shirt he'd bought at Target 3 years ago for Ethan's preschool graduation. They still fit barely. He made breakfast, woke Ethan, got him ready for school. You look fancy, Dad, Ethan said through a mouthful of cereal. Big day today, buddy. First day at the new job. You're going to be great. The confidence in his son's voice made Marcus believe it might be true. He dropped Ethan at school, then drove to Grayson AFB. The drive took 45 minutes. He arrived at the main gate at 7:30, half an hour early. The gate guard checked his ID against a list. Captain Hayes, yes. Welcome, sir. You'll want visitor parking lot C. Take your first right, then follow the signs. Marcus followed the directions, parked, and sat in his truck for 10 minutes gathering courage. At 7:55, he got out. Walked toward the building Captain Chen had specified. Building 447 Tactical Training Center. The door opened before he reached it. Major Castellano stood there grinning. Captain Hayes, right on time. Welcome aboard. Thank you, sir. Please, it's Ryan. We're pretty informal here when we're not flying. He gestured inside. Colonel Patterson is waiting. Chen's here too. We're all excited to get started. Marcus followed him through hallways he didn't recognize, but that felt familiar anyway. Military buildings had a particular quality. Clean, efficient, purpose-driven. Colonel Patterson's office was at the end of a long corridor. The colonel stood when Marcus entered, extending his hand. Captain Hayes, good to see you again. Thank you for this opportunity, sir. You earned it. Patterson gestured to a chair. Sit. Let's talk about what we need from you. Marcus sat. Captain Chen was there too, taking notes. Patterson leaned forward. We're running 2 training cycles simultaneously. New pilots fresh out of flight school and experienced pilots upgrading to F-22s. Both groups need tactical training. The manual stuff they can read. But the practical application, the instinctive decision-making, the ability to read a situation and respond in milliseconds, that's what we need you to teach. I understand, sir. I read your service jacket. Every commendation, every mission report. You have an unusual ability to anticipate enemy movements, to see 3 steps ahead. That's not something we can teach from a book. Marcus felt heat in his face. I paid attention, sir. Studied patterns. You did more than that, and we need you to help these pilots develop that same instinct. Patterson pulled out a schedule. Chen will coordinate your hours. We're thinking Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, 8 to 2. That gives you flexibility for your son. 6 hours, 3 days a week. 18 hours. At $75 an hour, that was $1,350 a week. More than Marcus made in a month at Lopez Auto. That works perfectly, sir. Outstanding. Patterson stood, signaling the meeting was ending. Chen, get him set up with base access and computer login. Ryan, take him to meet the training group. 20 minutes later, Marcus had a badge, a login, and a packet of information. He followed Major Castellano Ryan to a briefing room where a dozen pilots sat waiting. They looked young. So young. Some couldn't be more than 23, fresh from flight school, their uniforms still crisp and new. Ryan called the room to attention. Folks, this is Captain Marcus Hayes, call sign Hawk 1. He'll be your tactical instructor for this cycle. Captain Hayes has more combat experience than everyone in this room combined. You will listen to him. You will learn from him. Questions? No one spoke. Outstanding. Captain Hayes, they're all yours. Ryan left. The door closed. Marcus stood at the front of the room, 12 pairs of eyes watching him. For a second, panic clawed at his throat. What was he doing here? He was a mechanic. He fixed cars. He had no business teaching pilots. Then he saw their faces. Young, eager, nervous. The same way he'd looked 15 years ago, when he'd been brand new terrified he wasn't good enough, desperate to prove himself. These pilots needed what he knew. And he knew how to do this. At ease, everyone. Sit down. Marcus waited while they settled. My name is Marcus Hayes. Yes, my call sign is Hawk 1. No, I'm not active duty anymore. Yes, I still remember how to fly. And no, I won't be taking questions about whether I could still beat you in a simulator, because the answer is yes, and it would embarrass everyone. A few chuckles. The tension in the room eased. Here's what I want you to understand. Flying an F-22 is the easy part. The plane is smarter than all of us. It'll keep you alive even when you're making mistakes. The hard part is tactical thinking. Making decisions when you have 2 seconds and incomplete information. That's what gets pilots killed, and that's what I'm here to teach you. He pulled up a presentation on the screen. We're going to start with situational awareness. Tell me what you see in this image. It was a screenshot from a mission Marcus had flown 7 years ago. Radar display showing multiple contacts at various ranges and altitudes. A lieutenant raised her hand. 4 enemy aircraft, sir. 2 high, 2 low. Flanking formation. Good. What else? Silence. Look harder. What's not on the screen? More silence. Then a young captain spoke up. There's a gap in the coverage, sir. Northwest quadrant. They could have someone hiding there. Marcus smiled. Exactly. What you don't see is as important as what you do see. In this scenario, there was a 5th aircraft using terrain masking. He came up through that gap and almost got my wingman. We avoided it because I was looking for what wasn't there. He clicked to the next slide. This is called negative space analysis. Most pilots are trained to focus on threats they can identify. I'm going to teach you to focus on threats you can't. The session ran for 3 hours. Marcus taught. The pilots listened, asked questions, engaged. By the end, he'd covered 3 scenarios and assigned homework reviewing mission recordings and identifying decision points. Study these, he told them. We'll discuss them Wednesday. Dismissed. The pilots filed out. Most thanked him on their way past. The young captain who'd spotted the gap hung back. Sir, can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you leave if you were this good? Marcus had known this question would come eventually. He'd prepared an answer. But standing here in this room with this young pilot who reminded him of himself, prepared answers felt insufficient. I left because I lost someone I loved, and it broke me. Because I had a son who needed me present, not just alive. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is admit you can't keep going. The captain absorbed this. Do you regret it? Every day, and not at all. Both things are true. The captain nodded slowly. Thank you for being honest, sir. Thank you for asking. Marcus gathered his materials and walked out to the parking lot. His hands were shaking from adrenaline. He'd done it. He'd taught for 3 hours and hadn't failed. The pilots had learned. He'd contributed something real. He sat in his truck and called Ethan's school. Hi, this is Marcus Hayes. I'm going to be late picking up Ethan today. Can he wait in aftercare? Of course, Mr. Hayes. No problem. He drove to a park near the base and sat on a bench. Just sat, processing. For 3 years he'd believed his value had died with his career, that broken men had nothing left to offer, that the best he could hope for was survival. But today he'd taught 12 pilots things that might save their lives. He'd shared knowledge hard-won through experience. He'd been useful, valued, respected, not because of who he used to be, but because of what he still knew. His phone buzzed. Text from Ryan Castellano. Great first session. The pilots were impressed. See you Wednesday. Marcus smiled, typed back. Thank you. Happy to be here. He picked up Ethan at 5. His son came running out of aftercare backpack flying. Dad? How was it? It was good, buddy. Really good. Did you teach them cool stuff? I tried to. Did they listen? They did. Ethan grinned. I told you you'd be great. They went home. Marcus made spaghetti. They ate together. Ethan chattering about his day. Marcus only half listening, still processing his own. After dinner, while Ethan played with his jets in the living room, Marcus pulled out Diana's business card. He'd kept it tucked in his wallet, not sure why. He looked at it for the long time. Then he tucked it back in his wallet. He didn't need her offer. He had his own path now. But he was glad she'd made it. Glad she was trying to be better. People could change. People could heal. People could build new lives from broken pieces. Marcus was living proof. The weeks that followed established a rhythm Marcus hadn't experienced in 3 years. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, he taught at Grayson. Tuesday, Thursday, he had Ethan time. Weekends belonged to both of them entirely. The paycheck from his first month of consulting arrived via direct deposit. Marcus checked his phone at a stoplight and nearly rear-ended the car ahead of him. $5,400. After taxes. In 1 month. He'd made that much in 4 months at Lopez Auto. That evening he took Ethan to a real restaurant. Not fast food. Not the taco truck. An actual sit-down place with menus and waiters. Dad, this is fancy, Ethan whispered, looking around at the tablecloths and cloth napkins. We're celebrating, buddy. You can order whatever you want. Ethan's eyes went wide. Anything on the menu. His son studied the options with intense concentration, finally settling on chicken fingers and fries. Marcus ordered a steak. When it arrived perfectly cooked, he almost cried. He couldn't remember the last time he'd eaten food that wasn't stretched to last 3 days. Is it good, Dad? Ethan asked around a mouthful of chicken. Yeah, buddy, it's really good. Are we rich now? Marcus nearly choked on his steak. No, we're not rich, but we're doing better. A lot better. Can we get a new apartment one where the heat works? The question gutted him. His 7-year-old had spent years in a place where basic heating was unreliable and accepted it as normal. What kind of father let his kid live like that? Yeah, Marcus said. Yeah, we can look for a new place. That weekend, they went apartment hunting. Marcus had researched online, found a complex on the north side with good schools nearby. 2 bedrooms, working appliances, a playground, and a pool. The leasing agent showed them a unit on the 2nd floor. Clean carpet, fresh paint, kitchen with appliances that looked like they'd been manufactured in this decade. The rent is $1,200 a month, the agent said. First and last month plus security deposit to move in. $3,600. A year ago, that would have been impossible. 3 months ago, it would have been laughable. Now Marcus could afford it. We'll take it, the agent blinked. Don't you want to think about it? See other units. No, this one's perfect. When can we move in? Well, pending credit check and background verification, you could move in as early as next weekend. Marcus filled out the application, put down the deposit, walked out with keys pending approval. Ethan was bouncing. Dad, did we really just get a new apartment? We really did, buddy. With a pool. With a pool. Ethan threw his arms around Marcus's waist. This is the best day ever. Marcus hugged his son back, feeling emotion clog his throat. This was what stability felt like. This was what it meant to provide. Really provide, not just survive. The credit check cleared on Tuesday. They got approval to move in that Friday. Marcus took Thursday off from Grayson to pack. They didn't have much. Furniture from Goodwill, clothes in garbage bags, kitchen stuff from the dollar store. It all fit in his truck in 2 trips. Ryan Castellano showed up Friday morning with 3 other pilots and a rental truck. Heard you were moving, Ryan said. Figured you could use help. Marcus was speechless. You didn't have to do this. Yeah, we did. Your squadron now. We take care of our own. The pilots loaded furniture like they were running a military operation. Efficient. Organized. Everything in the truck in 45 minutes. Captain Chen arrived with coffee and donuts. Couldn't let you guys have all the fun. They moved everything to the new apartment in 2 hours. Set up furniture. Helped Marcus assemble Ethan's new bed, an actual bed frame, instead of a mattress on the floor. When it was done, Marcus stood in his new living room, surrounded by people who'd been strangers a month ago and now felt like family. Thank you, he managed. All of you. I don't know how to repay this. You repay it by showing up Monday and teaching those nuggets how not to get killed, Ryan said. That's payment enough. They left around noon. Ethan came home from school to find their new apartment fully set up. Whoa, Dad, this is amazing. Come see your room, buddy. Ethan's room was bigger than their old living room. Space for his bed, a desk shelves for his books and toys. A window that looked out over the playground. This is my room. Just mine. All yours. Ethan launched himself at Marcus. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Marcus held his son, thinking about how far they'd come. From cereal for dinner and broken heat to a real apartment with working appliances and enough space to breathe. Sarah would have loved this. She'd have cried seeing Ethan's face, seeing their son have his own room, seeing Marcus finally able to provide. That night, Marcus tucked Ethan into his new bed in his new room. His son looked small in the space but happy. Dad? Yeah, buddy. Are we going to be okay now? Yeah, we're going to be okay. Good. Ethan yawned. I was worried sometimes, before, but I didn't want to say anything. Marcus felt his heart crack. You never have to worry about telling me things, Ethan. Any things, good or bad. I know. I just didn't want to make you sad. You could never make me sad, buddy. You're the best thing in my life. Ethan smiled sleepily. You're the best thing in mine, too. Marcus sat with his son until he fell asleep, then walked through the apartment, still not quite believing it was real. He made coffee in a kitchen where everything worked, sat on his couch in a living room without water stains, looked out windows with screens that weren't torn. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Marcus, this is Chief Rodriguez from Grayson. Major Castellano mentioned you moved. Wanted to make sure you had everything you needed. We have extra furniture in base storage if you're short anything. Marcus typed back. Thank you, Chief. We're all set. I appreciate the offer. Copy that. See you Monday, sir. These people barely knew him, but they'd shown up, helped him move, offered furniture, treated him like he mattered. The Air Force had discharged him 3 years ago, decided he was too broken to be useful. But these people, this squadron, they saw something different. They saw value. Monday morning, Marcus arrived at Grayson to find Colonel Patterson waiting in the parking lot. Captain Hayes, walk with me. They walked toward the flight line. Patterson was quiet for a moment, hands clasped behind his back, in that military posture Marcus recognized. The pilots you're teaching are showing remarkable improvement, Patterson finally said. Their sim scores are up. Their tactical decision-making is sharper. Chen tells me they're asking for extra sessions with you. They're good students, sir, eager to learn. They have a good teacher. Patterson stopped walking. I want to expand your role. Add Tuesday and Thursday sessions. Different group. Experienced pilots transitioning from F-15s and F-16s. They need tactical updating. Interested. That would be 5 days a week, 30 hours, $2,250 a week, $9,000 a month. Marcus did the math automatically. That was more than he'd made as an active duty captain. Very interested, sir. Good. We'll start next week. Chen will coordinate. Patterson's expression softened slightly. How's your son adjusting? I heard you moved. He's great, sir. New apartment is working out well. Good. Family stability matters. Can't teach effectively if home life is chaos. Patterson started walking again. I'm recommending you for a longer-term contract. 2 years with option to extend. The pilots need what you're teaching. I need instructors I can count on. 2 years, job security, consistent income, the ability to plan beyond next month's rent. I'd be honored, sir. Excellent. Paperwork will be ready by end of week. That Wednesday, Marcus's training session was interrupted by alarms. Real alarms, not drills. Pilots scrambled, rushing to their aircraft. Something was happening. Marcus got his students to safety, then found Ryan in the chaos. What's going on? Unidentified aircraft violated restricted airspace. We're launching intercept. Ryan was already in his flight suit, moving toward his F-22. Stay in the building, Marcus. Standard protocol. Marcus watched through windows as 4 F-22s launched within minutes. The precision was beautiful, terrifying. This was what these pilots trained for. This was real. The base went on alert. Marcus kept his students calm, reviewing tactical scenarios while they waited for the all-clear. Inside, he was calculating, trying to think through what the intercepting pilots were facing, what decisions they'd have to make. 2 hours later, the F-22s returned. Crisis averted. Turned out to be a civilian pilot who'd gotten lost and wandered into restricted space. Scared, but harmless. But those 2 hours reminded Marcus why this work mattered. Why teaching these pilots to think tactically, to make split-second decisions, to read situations correctly, it all mattered because real consequences hung on those skills. After the all-clear, Marcus found Ryan in the ready room. Everyone okay? Yeah, just some lost Cessna pilot who nearly gave us all heart attacks. Ryan pulled off his helmet. But it's good training, keeps us sharp. Must be strange, Marcus said. Going from classroom to cockpit that fast. Ryan looked at him carefully. You miss it. Flying. It wasn't a question. Every single day, Marcus admitted. But I can't. Medical discharge is permanent. I know. Just watching you teach, seeing how you think through scenarios, it's clear you were born for this. Must be hard being on the ground. Marcus thought about how to answer. It's like losing a language you spoke fluently. I still understand it, can still teach it, but I can't speak it anymore. The worst part isn't losing the ability. It's knowing I'll never get it back. Ryan nodded. For what it's worth, you're making a hell of a difference from the ground. Those nuggets worship you. They hang on every word. They're good kids. They're good because you're teaching them to be better. That matters, Marcus. Maybe more than flying ever did. Marcus wanted to believe that. Some days he almost did. That Friday, Ethan's school called. He'd gotten in a fight. Could Marcus come in? Marcus left Grayson immediately, his mind racing. Ethan never fought. He was quiet, gentle, avoided conflict. The principal's office had Ethan sitting in a chair, knuckles bruised, trying not to cry. Another boy sat across from him, holding an ice pack to his eye. Mr. Hayes, thank you for coming, the principal said. Ethan got into an altercation with Tyler during recess. Marcus knelt in front of his son. What happened, buddy? Ethan's voice was small. Tyler said our apartment was probably still crappy because you only fix cars. He said people who fix cars are stupid and poor. Marcus felt anger flash through him, but he kept his voice level. So you hit him? He wouldn't stop. He kept saying mean things about you, about us. Marcus looked at the other boy. Tyler's parents had arrived, both in business suits, both looking irritated at the interruption to their day. Boys will be boys, Tyler's father said dismissively. No real harm done. Your son was bullying mine, Marcus said quietly. Bullying Tyler, said Ethan attacked him unprovoked. The principal cleared her throat. Actually, several students confirmed Tyler was making unkind comments about Ethan's family situation. Ethan defended himself. Tyler's mother huffed. "So you're saying it's Tyler's fault he got hit?" "I'm saying both boys made poor choices, but the instigating behavior was Tyler's." Marcus turned to his son. "Ethan hitting people isn't okay, even when they say mean things. You know that." Ethan nodded miserably. "But," Marcus continued, "I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself, for us. Next time you tell a teacher instead of using fists. Understood?" "Yes, sir." The principal assigned both boys detention. Tyler's parents left in a huff. Marcus walked Ethan to the truck. "I'm sorry, Dad," Ethan said. "I know I shouldn't have hit him. You shouldn't have, but I understand why you did." Marcus pulled out of the parking lot. "People are going to judge us, buddy. They're going to make assumptions based on jobs or apartments or clothes. That's on them, not us." "But it's not fair." "No, it's not. But you know what? Their opinions don't define us. We know who we are. We know what we're worth. That's what matters." "Tyler's dad drives a BMW," Ethan said quietly. "And his mom wears really expensive jewelry. They think they're better than us. Having nice things doesn't make you better. Being kind makes you better. Being brave makes you better. Working hard makes you better. Tyler's parents have money. Good for them. But money doesn't buy character." Ethan was quiet for a moment. "Dad." "Yeah." "Are you still a pilot? Even though you don't fly anymore?" Marcus thought about the question. "I don't know, buddy. I was a pilot. Now I teach pilots. I guess I'm something in between." "I think you're still a pilot," Ethan said firmly. "In your heart. Like how Mom's still my mom even though she's gone." Marcus had to pull over because his eyes were too blurred to drive safely. He sat in a grocery store parking lot and cried while his 7-year-old son held his hand. "It's okay, Dad," Ethan whispered. "It's okay to be sad." When Marcus could breathe again, he looked at his son. "How'd you get so wise?" "I learned from you." They went home. Marcus made grilled cheese for dinner. They ate and talked about everything except the fight. After Ethan was in bed, Marcus sat on his couch and thought about worth. Tyler's parents measured it in BMWs and jewelry. Diana had measured it in profit margins and contracts. The Air Force had measured it in fitness for duty. But Marcus was learning to measure it differently, in showing up for his son, in teaching pilots skills that might save their lives, in building a life from broken pieces, in choosing to keep going when quitting would have been easier. His phone buzzed. Text from Ryan. "Heard about Ethan's fight. Kid okay?" Marcus typed back. "He's fine. Defended his dad's honor. Can't be too mad about that." "That's a good kid you're raising." "You're doing it right, Marcus." The words settled into the hollow space in Marcus's chest. The space carved out by 3 years of believing he was failing. Believing broken men couldn't be good fathers. Believing survival was the best he could hope for. Maybe Ryan was right. Maybe he was doing it right after all. The next Tuesday, Marcus started teaching the experienced pilots. They were different from the Nuggets. More confident. More resistant to being taught. More convinced they already knew everything. Marcus introduced himself and immediately got challenged. "With respect, sir," a major said, "most of us have 10 years flight experience. What can you teach us that we haven't already learned?" Marcus had expected this. He pulled up a mission recording, his own from 6 years ago. "Watch this. Tell me what you see." The recording showed a complex engagement. Multiple enemy aircraft. Missiles inbound. Split-second decisions. The pilots watched in silence. On screen, Hawk 1 maneuvered impossibly. Avoided 3 missiles. Shot down 2 enemy aircraft. Saved his wingman. All in 90 seconds. "That's not possible," someone muttered. "That's what I'm here to teach you," Marcus said. "Not just possible. Replicable. If you're willing to learn." The major who'd challenged him leaned forward. "That was you." 6 years ago, Syrian operation. I'm going to break down every decision in that 90 seconds, show you the pattern recognition, the threat assessment, the predictive thinking, and then you're going to practice until you can do it too. He had their attention now. For the next 3 hours, they dissected that engagement. Marcus explained his thinking at each decision point, showed them what he'd seen that others missed, taught them to read the battle space like a language. By the end of the session, the major approached him. "Captain Hayes, I owe you an apology. That was the most valuable training I've had in 5 years. No apology needed. Skepticism is healthy. Now you know I can deliver. Wednesday we'll run you through sims." The pilot hesitated. "Can I ask you something? Why aren't you flying anymore?" Marcus had learned to answer this question without flinching. Medical discharge, PTSD, panic disorder. After my wife died, I fell apart. The Air Force decided I was a liability. They were right. But you still know more than any of us. Knowledge doesn't require a flight suit. Teaching doesn't require medical clearance. This is where I can still contribute. The pilot nodded slowly. My brother was medically discharged last year. Depression. He thinks his career is over, that he has nothing left to offer. Tell him it's not over. It's just different. There are other ways to serve, other ways to matter. I will. Thank you, sir. Marcus drove home that night thinking about the brother, about all the veterans who believed discharge meant worthlessness, who couldn't see beyond the identity they'd lost to the person they could still become. He'd been there. Hell, some days he was still there. But he was learning. Slowly. That broken didn't mean useless. That ending one chapter didn't mean the book was finished. The 2-year contract arrived the next week. Marcus read through it carefully. Salary, benefits, health insurance, job security. He signed it without hesitation. That weekend, he took Ethan to the pool at their apartment complex. Watched his son swim and play with other kids. Kids whose parents probably drove BMWs and wore expensive jewelry. But Ethan didn't care. He just wanted to play. A woman sat down on the lounge chair next to Marcus. "Your son's a great swimmer." "Thank you. He loves the water." "I'm Jennifer. We just moved in last month. Unit 304. Marcus, 208. They talked for a while. She was a nurse, single mom. Her daughter was in Ethan's grade. "What do you do?" Jennifer asked. Marcus had learned to answer this proudly. "I'm a tactical consultant. I teach fighter pilots at Grayson Air Force Base." "Oh, wow. That's impressive." "I used to fly. Now I teach. It's good work." "I bet. My ex-husband was military. Marines. He always said the instructors were the ones who really shaped careers." They talked until the sun started setting and the kids got tired. Ethan and Jennifer's daughter Maya had become fast friends. "We should set up a play date," Jennifer suggested. Maya would love it. Ethan would too. Marcus drove home, feeling something unfamiliar, hopeful, like maybe this new life could include more than just him and Ethan. Maybe it could include community, friends, normal things. That night after Ethan was asleep, Marcus sat on his balcony. The apartment complex was quiet, lights on in windows, families settling in for the night. His phone buzzed. Email from Colonel Patterson. "Captain Hayes, your 6-week evaluation is exemplary. Pilot performance has improved measurably. You're making a real difference. Thank you for your service." Marcus read the email 3 times. Let the words sink in. He was making a real difference, not in spite of being broken, not despite his discharge, but because of his experience, because of what he'd lived through and learned and survived. He thought about the man he'd been on that flight to Dallas. Invisible, overlooked, convinced his best days were behind him. He'd been wrong. His best days weren't behind him. They were just different than he'd imagined. He pulled out his phone and scrolled to a number he hadn't called in 3 years. His old squadron commander, the man who'd overseen his discharge, who'd sat across a desk and told Marcus he was no longer fit for duty. Marcus had been angry at him for years, blamed him for ending his career. But now he understood. That commander had done the right thing. Marcus hadn't been fit to fly. He'd been a danger to himself and others. The discharge had saved his life, given him space to heal, to find a different path. He typed out a text. "Sir, this is Marcus Hayes, Hawk 1. I just wanted to say thank you for making the hard call 3 years ago. I was angry then. But you were right, and I'm in a better place now because of it." He hit send before he could second-guess himself. The response came 5 minutes later. "Marcus, I've thought about you often. Wondered how you were doing. I'm glad you're in a better place. You were one of the best pilots I ever commanded. I'm sorry it ended the way it did, but I'm not sorry you're still here." Marcus sat on his balcony and cried. For the man he'd been. For the career he'd lost. For Sarah. For the 3 years of believing he was worthless. And for the gradual, painful, beautiful realization that he'd never been worthless at all. He'd just been measuring himself by the wrong standards. Inside, Ethan slept in his own room in their apartment, with working heat and a pool. Tomorrow, Marcus would teach pilots at a job that paid him well and gave him purpose. This weekend, they'd have a playdate with new friends. It wasn't the life he'd planned. It wasn't the life he'd wanted. But it was a good life, maybe even a great one. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. 6 months passed in a rhythm that felt almost like healing. Marcus taught 5 days a week at Grayson, came home to Ethan every evening, spent weekends building the kind of life he'd stopped believing was possible. The apartment became a home. The paycheck became security. The work became purpose. But healing wasn't linear. Marcus learned that the hard way on a Tuesday morning in March. He was running a simulator session with 4 experienced pilots when the scenario triggered something. The sim showed a training flight gone wrong. Hydraulic failure. Spinning aircraft. Radio chatter that sounded too much like Sarah's last transmission. Marcus's chest tightened. His vision tunneled. The room tilted. "Sir." One of the pilots stood up. "Captain Hayes, are you okay?" Marcus couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. The walls were closing in and his heart was trying to punch through his ribs and he couldn't get air. "Get Major Castellano," someone said. "Now." Marcus was distantly aware of hands guiding him to a chair. Someone put his head between his knees. Someone else was talking to him, but the words were underwater, garbled, meaningless. Ryan appeared. His voice was calm, authoritative, cutting through the panic. "Marcus, look at me. Eyes on me." Marcus forced his eyes to focus. Ryan's face came into view. "Breathe with me. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. Can you do that?" Marcus tried, failed, tried again. His lungs wouldn't cooperate. "You're safe," Ryan said firmly. "You're at Grayson. You're in the simulator room. There's no danger. Your brain is lying to you. Trust me, not it." Slowly, painfully, Marcus's breathing evened out. The tunnel vision receded. The panic released its grip. "There you go," Ryan said. "You're okay. Just a panic attack. They pass." The pilots were staring. Marcus felt shame wash over him, hot and suffocating. "I'm sorry," he managed. "I'm sorry, I need a minute." Ryan helped him stand. "Take the rest of the day. We've got this covered." Marcus didn't argue. He grabbed his things and walked to his truck on legs that felt like they might give out, sat in the driver's seat, and put his head on the steering wheel. 3 years since his discharge, and the panic attack still came. Still grabbed him by the throat when he least expected it. Still proved that broken things stayed broken no matter how much you pretended otherwise. His phone rang. He ignored it. It rang again. "Hello. Marcus, it's Colonel Patterson. Ryan briefed me. How are you?" "I'm fine, sir. Just, it won't happen again." "Marcus, I'm not calling to reprimand you. I'm calling to check on you. Are you somewhere safe?" "In my truck. In the parking lot." "Can you drive home?" Marcus assessed himself. "Yes, sir." "Good. Go home. Take tomorrow off. We'll talk Thursday. Sir, I don't need... That's not a request, Captain. Go home. Take care of yourself. That's an order. The line went dead. Marcus drove home on autopilot. Let himself into the empty apartment. Ethan was at school. Wouldn't be home for hours. He sat on the couch and stared at nothing. The panic had passed, but the shame remained. Those pilots had seen him fall apart. Had watched their instructor, the man they were supposed to trust and respect, lose control like some rookie who couldn't handle stress. They'd never look at him the same way. Patterson would probably reconsider the contract. Marcus would be back to fixing cars and surviving instead of living. His phone buzzed. Text from Ryan. Stop spiraling. The pilots are fine. Nobody thinks less of you. PTSD is part of the job. Talk to you tomorrow. Marcus stared at the message. Read it 3 times. Tried to believe it. Another text, this one from Captain Chen. Sir, the pilots asked me to tell you they hope you're okay. They also said today's session was valuable even though it got cut short. See you Thursday. Then, one from Chief Rodriguez. Panic attacks are a bitch. Been there. You're not alone, sir. Call if you need anything. Marcus set his phone down. These people knew. They understood. And they weren't running away. When Ethan came home from school, Marcus was still on the couch. His son took one look at his face and climbed up beside him without a word. Just sat there, small and solid and present. Bad day, Dad. Yeah, buddy, bad day. Want to talk about it? Marcus pulled his son close. I had a panic attack at work, in front of people I'm supposed to be teaching. I felt like a failure. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Mrs. Peterson says everyone has hard days. She says it doesn't make you bad at your job. It just makes you human. Mrs. Peterson sounds smart. She is. She also said brave people aren't the ones who never get scared. They're the ones who get scared and do the hard thing anyway. Marcus felt his eyes sting. When did you get so wise? I learned from you, Ethan said, echoing his words from months ago. You get scared all the time, but you still take care of me. You still go to work. You still try. That's brave, Dad. They sat together until the sun started to set. Then Marcus made dinner, and they ate and talked about Ethan's day. Normal things. Safe things. The kind of evening that reminded Marcus why he kept fighting. Thursday morning, Marcus returned to Grayson. He'd spent Wednesday preparing what to say, how to address the incident, how to salvage his credibility. He walked into the simulator room expecting judgment. Instead, the 4 pilots from Tuesday were waiting. They stood when he entered. Sir, the senior captain said, we wanted to say something before we continue training. Here it comes, Marcus thought. The polite dismissal. The loss of respect. Thank you for Tuesday, the captain continued, for showing us that PTSD doesn't mean you're weak. That panic attacks don't erase expertise. That broken people can still be brilliant teachers. Marcus was speechless. Another pilot spoke up. My dad was Air Force, Vietnam. He never talked about his panic attacks. Drank himself to death trying to hide them. If he'd had someone like you, someone who was open about struggling, maybe he'd still be here. We don't think less of you, sir, a third pilot said. We think more, because you keep showing up even when it's hard. Marcus had to look away. I appreciate that, but we have work to do. Let's get to it. They trained for 3 hours. The pilots were engaged, asking questions, pushing themselves. At the end of the session, Marcus felt like maybe he hadn't destroyed everything after all. Colonel Patterson called him in that afternoon. Sit down, Marcus. Marcus sat preparing for the conversation about whether he was fit to continue. Patterson leaned back in his chair. I'm not going to ask if you're okay. That's between you and your doctor. What I am going to say is this: you're doing important work here. The pilots need you. And part of what they need is seeing someone who's been through hell and came out the other side, still functional. Sir, I'm not sure falling apart in front of students qualifies as functional. You didn't fall apart. You had a physiological response to trauma triggers. Then you removed yourself from the situation. That's exactly what you should have done." Patterson's expression was serious. "Marcus, you're not the only person on this base dealing with PTSD. You're just one of the few honest enough to not hide it. That matters. I don't want to be a liability. You're not, but I am going to insist you talk to base mental health. Not because you're unfit, because everyone dealing with this stuff needs support. Can you do that?" Marcus nodded. "Yes, sir." "Good. Now get out of here. You've got teaching to do tomorrow." Marcus left the office feeling lighter. Not fixed, not healed, but accepted. Understood. That evening he made the appointment with base mental health. The therapist was a civilian contractor, a woman in her 50s named Dr. Sarah Mitchell. The name was a punch to the gut. "I know," she said when Marcus flinched. "Unfortunate coincidence. You can call me Dr. Mitchell if that's easier." They talked for an hour, about Sarah, about the discharge, about the 3 years of believing he was worthless, about the panic attacks that still came without warning. "You've been through significant trauma," Dr. Mitchell said. "Loss of spouse, loss of career, loss of identity. That's not something you just get over." "I thought I was past it. I have a job I love. My son is thriving. Things are good." Good doesn't mean healed. Healing isn't linear. You can be doing well and still have hard days. That's normal. "The pilots saw me panic. They saw me weak. They saw you human. There's a difference." Dr. Mitchell leaned forward. "Marcus, you're teaching these young pilots skills that might save their lives. But you're also teaching them something equally important, that struggling doesn't disqualify you from being valuable. That mental health issues don't erase competence. In a military culture that often stigmatizes this stuff, that's radical." Marcus wanted to believe her. "So what do I do when the panic comes?" "You keep doing what you did Tuesday. Recognize it. Remove yourself if needed. Practice your breathing exercises. And remember that panic attacks can't actually hurt you. They're uncomfortable as hell, but they pass." They set up weekly appointments. Marcus left feeling like maybe this was another piece of the rebuilding. Another step toward becoming whole. The weeks that followed were better. Marcus taught. Ethan thrived. The panic attacks still came occasionally, but less frequently. And when they did, Marcus was learning to ride them out instead of drowning in shame. In May, Colonel Patterson called Marcus into his office with Major Castellano and Captain Chen. "We have a situation," Patterson said. "We're hosting a joint training exercise in July. Air Force, Navy, some international partners. It's a big deal, lots of brass watching. We want you to design the tactical scenarios." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. "Sir, that's a significant responsibility. You're our best tactical mind. The scenarios you've developed for regular training are excellent. We need that creativity and expertise for this exercise." "I'll do my best, sir." "I know you will. Chen will coordinate resources. Ryan will be your liaison with the participating squadrons. You'll have full authority over scenario design." It was trust. Real trust. The kind Marcus hadn't experienced since before his discharge. He spent the next 6 weeks designing scenarios that would challenge experienced pilots without being impossible. Complex situations requiring quick thinking, creative solutions, perfect execution. Ethan helped without knowing it. Would ask questions about tactics that made Marcus think differently. Would draw pictures of aircraft formations that sparked ideas. "Dad, what if the bad guys pretended to retreat, but it was really a trap?" Marcus would write that down, incorporate it into a scenario, and watch pilots struggle with the exact problem his 7-year-old had identified. The exercise arrived in July. 2 weeks of intensive training. Pilots from 4 countries. Admirals and generals watching every move. Marcus ran the scenarios from a control room, watching radar displays and listening to radio chatter. Adjusting difficulty in real time. Pushing pilots to their limits. Ryan flew several sorties, and after each one, he'd find Marcus. Those scenarios are brilliant, and I hate you for making me think that hard. That's the point. I know. Doesn't mean I have to like it. On the final day of the exercise, Colonel Patterson invited Marcus to the observation deck where senior officers were watching the culminating scenario. A complex multi-service engagement requiring perfect coordination. Marcus stood at the back watching his scenario play out, listening to pilots adapt and improvise and execute. A Navy admiral turned to Patterson. Who designed these scenarios? They're exceptional. Captain Marcus Hayes, former F-22 pilot, now our tactical consultant. The Hawk won. The admiral's eyebrows rose. I've read the mission reports. Remarkable pilot. Remarkable teacher, Patterson corrected. He's why our pilots are performing at this level. The scenario concluded successfully. The pilots had worked together perfectly, overcome every challenge Marcus had designed. Patterson addressed the room. I'd like to introduce Captain Marcus Hayes, who designed the training scenarios you've been watching. Marcus stepped forward, acutely aware of all the brass in the room. Admirals, generals, people who'd probably read his discharge papers, who knew he'd fallen apart and been deemed unfit. A Marine general spoke up. Captain Hayes, those scenarios were the most challenging training I've seen in 20 years. How'd you develop them? Marcus found his voice. Sir, I studied real combat situations, identified decision points where outcomes could have been different. Then I designed scenarios that force pilots to recognize those moments and choose correctly. Brilliant approach. You available for consulting with Marine Aviation? Marcus looked at Patterson. Captain Hayes is under contract with us, Patterson said smoothly. But we might be able to work something out. After the brass left, Patterson pulled Marcus aside. That was multiple flag officers asking for your expertise. Do you understand what that means? Sir. It means you're becoming known, respected. Your reputation is rebuilding, Marcus. Not as a pilot, but as something potentially more valuable, someone who makes other pilots better. Marcus felt the word settle. Not as a pilot, as something else, something different but equally important. That evening, Marcus called Ethan from base. Hey buddy, I'm going to be late tonight. Debriefing ran long. That's okay, Dad. Maya's mom said I could stay for dinner. Marcus smiled. Jennifer had become a good friend over the past months. Her daughter and Ethan were inseparable. Tell her thank you for me. I will. Dad? Yeah. Are you happy? The question caught him off guard. Why do you ask? You smile more now. You don't look sad all the time like you used to. Marcus felt his throat tighten. Yeah, buddy. I'm happy. Good. I like it when you're happy. Love you, Ethan. Love you too, Dad. Marcus ended the call and sat in his truck for a moment. Was he happy he'd been so focused on surviving, on functioning, on providing that he hadn't stopped to assess whether he was actually happy? But Ethan was right. The crushing weight of inadequacy had lifted. The constant shame had faded. He woke up most mornings feeling purpose instead of dread. He was happy, maybe for the first time since Sarah died. That realization brought tears, not sad ones, grateful ones, for second chances, for communities that accepted him, for work that mattered, for a son who loved him unconditionally, for being alive in a way he hadn't been in years. He drove to Jennifer's apartment to pick up Ethan. She answered the door with a smile. They're playing video games. Want to come in? Marcus stepped inside. Jennifer's apartment was similar to his. 2 bedrooms. Small but comfortable. Pictures of Maya everywhere. Drink, Jennifer offered. I just made iced tea. Sure, thanks. They sat at her kitchen table while the kids played in the living room. This had become routine, easy conversation, comfortable silence. The kind of friendship Marcus hadn't realized he'd been missing. How was the big exercise? Jennifer asked. Good. Really good, actually. Bunch of senior officers said nice things about my work. That's amazing, Marcus. You should be proud. I'm getting there. Still feels weird sometimes, like I'm pretending to be someone I'm not. Jennifer studied him. You know what I see when I look at you? What? Someone who survived something terrible and built a life anyway. Someone who shows up for his kid every single day. Someone who turned tragedy into purpose. She paused. That's not pretending. That's real. Marcus felt heat in his face. I'm just doing what needs doing. Most people don't. Most people give up. You didn't. They held eye contact for a moment too long. Then Maya called from the living room and the moment passed. Marcus collected Ethan and drove home. His son was chattering about video games and pizza and how Maya's cat was really funny. Dad, do you like Miss Jennifer? Sure, buddy, she's nice. I mean like her, like more than friends. Marcus nearly swerved off the road. Where's this coming from? You smile different when you talk to her, and she smiles different when she talks to you. Maya noticed too. Maya noticed. We talk about stuff. She thinks you and her mom should go on a date. Marcus was not equipped for this conversation. Buddy, Miss Jennifer and I are just friends. But maybe you could be more than friends, like how Mom was your friend first and then you got married. The mention of Sarah made Marcus's chest ache. Mom was special, Ethan. There's not going to be another Mom. I know, but maybe there could be someone else special, someone different. You're allowed to be happy, Dad. Marcus pulled into their parking spot, turned off the engine, looked at his son. You'd be okay with that if I dated someone. Ethan shrugged. I want you to be happy. If Miss Jennifer makes you happy, that's good. If someone else makes you happy, that's good too. I just want you to smile the way you've been smiling lately. Marcus pulled his son into a hug. I love you, buddy. You know that. I know. Love you too. That night, Marcus lay in bed thinking about Jennifer. About the easy friendship they'd developed. About whether maybe possibly it could become something more. Sarah had been gone 3 years. 3 years of survival and grief and slowly rebuilding. Was he ready for something new? Did he deserve it? His therapist's voice echoed in his head. Grief doesn't have a timeline. You're allowed to move forward. He fell asleep without deciding anything. But for the first time in 3 years, the thought of moving forward didn't feel like betrayal. The next Monday, Marcus arrived at Grayson to find Colonel Patterson waiting with news. The Marine General from last week, Patterson said. He wants to contract you for scenario design. 2 weeks Marine Corps Air Station Miramar. August timeframe. Interested. Sir, I'd have to take time away from here. We can manage. This is good for you, Marcus. Good for your reputation. Good for your career. Career. Marcus turned the word over in his mind. He'd stopped thinking in terms of career. Had been focused on just getting through each day. But maybe this was a career. Not the one he'd planned, but a real one nonetheless. I'll do it, sir. Excellent. Chen will coordinate details. That evening, Marcus told Ethan about California. 2 weeks is a long time, Dad. I know, buddy. But maybe you could stay with Maya and her mom, if that's okay with Miss Jennifer. Ethan's face lit up. That would be awesome. Marcus texted Jennifer. Big ask. I have a work trip to California in August. 2 weeks. Any chance Ethan could stay with you? I'll pay for food and anything he needs. Her response came immediately. Of course Maya will be thrilled. And don't worry about money. We're happy to have him. They worked out details. Marcus would leave the first week of August. Ethan would stay with Jennifer and Maya. Marcus would call every night. The month passed quickly. Marcus's Tuesday panic attack became a distant memory. His sessions with Dr. Mitchell were helping. The nightmares were less frequent. He took Jennifer and the kids to dinner one Friday. Nothing formal, just burgers and fries. But it felt different than the casual hangouts they'd had before. Ethan and Maya disappeared to the play area. Marcus and Jennifer sat across from each other in a sticky booth. Thank you, Marcus said, for taking Ethan, for being such a good friend, for all of it. You don't have to thank me. That's what friends do. Is that all we are friends? The question hung between them. Jennifer's expression shifted. I don't know. What do you want us to be? Marcus thought about Sarah, about love and loss, and whether his heart had room for more. I think I want to find out. If you do. Jennifer smiled. I'd like that. They didn't kiss, didn't hold hands, just sat in a booth in a burger place and admitted that maybe something was growing between them. It felt right, scary and new and right. August arrived. Marcus packed for California, hugged Ethan goodbye at Jennifer's apartment. Be good, buddy. Listen to Miss Jennifer. I will. Have fun teaching Marine's dad. Love you. Love you too. Miramar was different than Grayson. Bigger, more intense. Marines carried themselves with aggressive confidence that made Air Force pilots look relaxed. Marcus spent 2 weeks designing scenarios, running exercises, teaching tactics. The Marines were skeptical at first. A washed-up Air Force captain trying to teach them, please. But by the end of this first week, they were convinced. By the end of the second week, they were asking him to extend his contract. I can't, Marcus told the commanding officer. I have commitments at Grayson, and a son who needs me. If you ever change your mind, we'll make you an offer you can't refuse. Marcus flew home, feeling accomplished, valued, like maybe he was building something real. Ethan met him at the apartment with a tackle hug. Dad, you're back. Miss me. So much. I have so much to tell you. They spent the evening catching up. Ethan had thrived with Jennifer and Maya, had helped cook dinner, had gone to the pool every day, had been happy. Marcus realized his son didn't need him every second anymore. Ethan was growing up, becoming independent. That was good, necessary, and terrifying. September brought a new school year. Ethan started 3rd grade. Marcus continued teaching at Grayson. His relationship with Jennifer developed slowly, carefully, no rushing. Just 2 broken people learning to trust again. In October, on what would have been Sarah's birthday, Marcus took Ethan to her grave. They'd gone every year, brought flowers, told her about their year. Mom, I'm in 3rd grade now. Ethan said to the headstone. I'm really good at math. Dad's teaching pilots. He's really happy. I think you'd be proud of us. Marcus added his own thoughts silently. I'm okay, Sarah. I'm finally okay. I hope that's what you wanted for us. On the drive home, Ethan said, Do you think Mom knows about Miss Jennifer? Marcus's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Yeah, buddy. I think she does. Is she okay with it? Your mom wanted me to be happy. She wanted you to be happy. I think she'd be glad we found someone who helps with that. Good, because I really like Miss Jennifer. Me too, buddy. Me too. November brought Thanksgiving. Marcus and Ethan spent it with Jennifer and Maya, 4 people who'd all experienced loss creating something new together. They went around the table, sharing what they were grateful for. Maya said friends and her mom and her cat. Jennifer said health and her daughter and new beginnings. Ethan said his dad and his new school and F-22s. Marcus looked at the 3 people around the table. I'm grateful for second chances, for people who saw past oil stains and broken pieces, for work that matters, and for family, whatever form it takes. Jennifer reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Later, after the kids were playing in Maya's room, Jennifer and Marcus sat on her couch. I'm falling for you, Jennifer said quietly. I don't know if it's too soon to say that, but it's true. Marcus felt fear and hope war in his chest. I'm falling for you too. It scares me. Me too. But maybe scared is okay. Maybe scared means it matters. Maybe it does. They kissed for the first time, gentle, tentative, full of possibility. It wasn't the same as loving Sarah. Nothing would ever be the same as that. But it was real, and good, and enough. December arrived cold and clear. Marcus had been at Grayson for 10 months. 10 months that had transformed everything. Colonel Patterson called him in 2 weeks before Christmas. "Marcus, I'm promoting you to Senior Tactical Consultant. Salary increase. More authority over program development. And I'm recommending you for a DoD contract. Department of Defense wants your scenario designs for all military branches." Marcus sat down. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll accept. You've earned this, Marcus. You've rebuilt your career, made yourself indispensable. You should be proud." "Thank you, sir. I accept." That evening, Marcus took Ethan and Jennifer and Maya to dinner, told them about the promotion. "Dad, that's amazing." Ethan was beaming. "We're proud of you," Jennifer added. Marcus looked at the 3 people who'd become his family. "I couldn't have done it without you. Any of you." Later, lying in bed, Marcus thought about the man he'd been a year ago. Invisible. Overlooked. Convinced his value had died with his career. He'd been wrong. His value had just been dormant, waiting for the right circumstances to bloom again. The steel band on his wrist caught moonlight. Hawk 1. The call sign still meant something. Just something different than before. He'd stopped measuring success by whether he could fly. Started measuring it by whether he could teach, whether he could provide, whether he could love and be loved. By those measures, he was succeeding, maybe even thriving. His phone buzzed. Text from Ryan. "Drinks tomorrow night, squadron's buying. We're celebrating having the best tactical instructor in the Air Force." Marcus smiled, typed back, "I'll be there." He set his phone down and closed his eyes. Tomorrow he'd teach. Tomorrow he'd parent. Tomorrow he'd continue building this unexpected life. But tonight he'd just rest, content, grateful, finally genuinely happy. The cost of a seat meant nothing compared to the price some men paid. But sometimes, if you survived the payment, you got to discover that broken things could be rebuilt. That endings could become beginnings. That the man in seat 12F could become someone new entirely. Someone who knew his worth had nothing to do with leather seats or designer clothes, or whether people noticed him. Someone who measured success by the lives he touched, the students he taught, the son he raised, the love he dared to accept. Someone whole in his brokenness, flying even though his feet never left the ground. Hawk 1. Still soaring, just in different skies.